Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Today I'm looking at a very small book in a series of what are called very short introductions. It's a series of books published by Oxford University Press. We've reviewed some in the past, one on jurisprudence by Professor Wax. The book I'm looking at today is a really excellent book on human rights. So it's got the title Human Rights, a very short introduction, and it's been written by Professor Andrew Clapham. As I say, it's part of the very short introduction series from OUP. My wife Elizabeth and I have written the review, and we gave the book a review title: Human Rights, an International Perspective, all you need to know in less than 200 pages. Now let's have a look at the book. There it is there. It's a very small book. That's the front, spine, and then the back. You'll see if you open it up that there is a little bit of advertising, a little bit sort of back cover stuff and some information about the various short introductions. Then at the front you've also got a certain amount of information just about the book itself, with a few quotes at the bottom there. Then if you get into the book, you'll see that the typeface is quite small. There's a lot of information, and in fact what you have at the back is a useful, that's the actual very short introduction series. This is number 163 in the series. You do have an index which is very useful at the back, and then you have the actual Human Rights Act, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, actually set out at the back in an annex, which I think is extremely helpful. Then you do have notes for each of the chapters, again, which are listed at the back. Then at the front, what you do have is quite a lot of information about the very short introduction series right at the front. Then you've got the front cover. Then after that you've got the contents. You can see how it's structured. 9 chapters in total, ending up with the points about the death penalty at the end, which I hope the Americans will take some notice of, and the Indonesians for that matter. A preface, which is always worth reading. Acknowledgements. Then you get into some illustrations, some nice illustrations actually throughout the publication. You can see some of them here. Various people involved. You can see the sorts of problems. Just looking at the structure of the book, you've got chapter numbers. There's no paragraphing, no real footnotes. You've got some shaded box sections to highlight particular questions, which I think are well worth looking at. This chapter 4 is on torture, and then after that you've again got the Guy Fawkes confession, when they'd almost beaten him to death, and you could see the difference in the signatures between when he was a man who was actually able to understand what was going on, and then what they had done to him afterwards. And then right at the end you have appalling things like the death penalty issues and that matter. Now I think this is a very important book. It's easy to read. It's been very well written. It's rather like, in fact, attending some of these seminars which these professors give in the academic world. They're very highly qualified people. They know their subjects inside out, and they're able to express themselves brilliantly, which is why, of course, they're professors. But this is what we say about the book, because I do think this is a wonderful additional resource for many people as either a primer or something where you've just got a general interest in the subject matter. We say this, though, that Professor Andrew Clapham brings together the differing contemporary strands of human rights issues that we face today with this very short introduction. He does so in a very matter-of-fact way, making the introduction just for the interested individual reader. So it makes it feel as though you and he are in the room together, and he's explaining the subject to you. And the format, of course, which OUP have set out, is both a quick and a readable format, and I think the book is very well fashioned to the individual looking for information quite quickly, and certainly Clapham succeeds in that objective. He covers such fascinating issues, which have listed, of course, in all blurb, as the controversial incarceration of prisoners at Guantanamo, to the brutal ethnic cleansing in Darfur to the widespread denial of equal rights to women in many areas of the world, Saudi Arabia not being mentioned of course, but being the prime area, and human rights violations which remain a constant presence in rolling news items today and in our everyday lives at home and at work. So this book has a direct relevance to everything we are facing as humankind in the modern societies that we live in. And I do think, whatever your views about the Human Rights Act and its imperfections, the fact is that the issue itself won't go away, and it's something that I think every single government across the planet should take notice of. Many of them have no intention of doing so, I hasten to add, but at least you've got these books which assist. And the back of the book, of course, gives you a full statement on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, Clapham gives an international perspective to the task facing him, and he focuses on highly topical issues such as torture, arbitrary detention, privacy, health, and discrimination. Topics which of course are relevant to all today. And this very short introduction on human rights, we think, does assist readers to understand for themselves the controversies and complexities behind this vitally relevant issue. The author looks at the philosophical justification for rights, the historic origins of human rights and how they're formed in law. He also explains what our human rights actually are and what they might be, and where the human rights movement is actually heading at the moment, which we think will benefit a wide range of his readership. I'm recording this just before the general election in May 2015, and of course we are at a crossroads here as to what may well happen with human rights legislation in the next couple of years. The fact is we may well have an amended act or some changes, but we have no idea at the moment what will happen. The short book itself covers one main area of current interest which we found above all most interesting. That is how the human rights movement has gained increasing attention internationally, and the author explains the scope of human rights today and how they're used in both national and international law. It's completely up to date. Human rights remain a most topical and controversial issue for all of us, and recent national and world events mean that they've been regularly invoked and analysed. And he looks also at the past, the present and the future of human rights, especially relevant, as I say, in a general election year 2015 in the UK. Questions of whether human rights are under threat as they come to be seen by some as obstacles to peace, development and security are also well covered. In the wider community, of course, ties in law, philosophy, politics and so forth reveal the role played by human rights in the contemporary world that we live in, and it has a special significance for Clapham, as he was for 6 years the representative of Amnesty International at the UN in New York. Today, it's not usually long before a problem gets expressed as a human rights issue. Taking this into account, an appeal to human rights in the face of injustice can be a heartfelt and morally justified demand for some, whilst for others it remains merely an empty slogan, and that's really what the book is bringing out. Such a balance is well presented here again in our view, in what is actually a most succinct manner. And these very short introduction books form this series from OUP. There's a linked website too which you can have a look at, and they present themselves as excellent primers, as I've said, for undergraduates and anyone interested as lay people. The series contains hundreds of titles in almost every conceivable subject area, and they're pocket-sized books which are perfect to get ahead in a new subject quite quickly. And OUP have brought together expert authors across a whole range of fields who combine facts, analysis, perspective, new ideas and enthusiasm to make interesting and challenging topics highly readable, and they do just that. It's something where you can pick up the book and go through it quite quickly on a longish train journey, and you'll find you come away with a great deal more information. Let me conclude by saying that we feel they are highly suitable starting points, as I've said, for students of law, morals and ethical philosophy, history and politics, and of course activists in civil society movements, or those who seek an accessible introduction to human rights and their relevance to current events. So what I would call Clapham on Human Rights can be summed up as one of the best titles we have read yet from OUP in this series, and we would say that of course because we're lawyers. But it's a great book, and I think he's done a wonderful job. There it is again, front spine, there's the number of it there, then the back. Nice little arty front cover, but they're all like that. There's the back bit of it again, and the front bit, just so you see some quotes about the actual book itself. And then if you go just open it up into the middle again, you've got boxes making very important points about a particular human rights issue, shaded box areas. And as I've said before, you've got, we saw Guy Fawkes earlier, that statement. You've got prisoners and so forth. All of the usual bits and pieces. There's an Amnesty International getting a bit of a plug as well. You've got all of the usual important issues involved in the human rights area coming together, and I think the strands which Professor Clapham brings together with the book will actually inform and educate very many people. It's a big thank you to him and to OUP, both for the book and for the series. So thank you very much indeed for all the work you've done on it. Bye bye.